Okay, so now that you have seen the expert, I guess you could call him, go into detail on what exactly the commas are going to look like, let's make sure you truly understand what commas and sentence structure are. This ties to exactly what it said with Suitcase 1, so this should kind of in your mind cement what he was saying. The most tested commas are the misplaced, which means out of when they're not supposed to be, misused, wrong grammar rule, okay, and then commas that are missing, okay. So these are the ones you're going to find the most often. What are the different comma rules that they're going to test for? The first one is the one where you have two complete sentences. This is what he called the IC, comma, fanboy, IC. Okay, this is where you have two independent clauses. There's your IC, joined by your fanboy conjunction. And here's your fanboy if you don't know. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. If you don't know those, then pause me and write them down on your study guide. Okay, you can put them on your suitcase, you can put them on the back of your suitcase, you can put them on your own paper, it doesn't matter. But fanboy is probably the most tested comma rule, so know your fanboy conjunctions, okay, because they use it both with complete sentences and to do the misused one, and so knowing those conjunctions will really help you. All right, Henry could tie the shoe himself. This is an independent clause because you have Henry, and what could he do? He could tie what? The shoe himself. So you have subject, verb, and then you've completed your thought, so it makes sense. Or he could do what? Ask who? Amanda. So you've got your subject, verb, you've completed your thought, and so you now have I see and I see. You have to combine this. Okay, ACT is going to ask you how to combine it. So it's going to be comma, fanboy. Okay. There's only 3 ways to combine 2 complete sentences, and this is the one we're talking about right now. And but are the 2 most popular conjunctions on the ACT. Okay, you might see yet, you might see so. I've seen those a few times recently on the tests that were published in the last couple of years. But statistically, and but are the most popular. London what? Is, okay, and then is what? Old city, complete sentence. Some parts of it are extremely modern. Somewhat. This is actually part of your subject. They are what? Modern, so you've got a complete sentence, and so you're going to combine it with comma, fanboy. Okay, this is another example of I see that you have to combine with comma, fanboy. The next one is to separate adjectives whose order could be reversed. Okay, adjectives, just as a reminder, are words that describe a noun. Okay, so let's look at this sentence. The groaning, rumbling train finally pulled into the station. What is our subject? Well, it's train. Okay, that's a noun. Groaning and rumbling describe train. The groaning train, the rumbling train. It makes perfect sense. Okay. The rumbling train, the groaning train. That makes sense. Because these 2 can be switched in the order in which they are given in the sentence, you have to separate it by that comma. The problem with the ACT is you have to take the time to stop and go, okay, can this be flipped and read it? And so many times kids are in such a hurry, they miss that. This is one of those that you actually have to stop and go, can I flip it or can I not? Commas should also be used after introductory words or phrases, okay, which we'll get to on another slide. Questions involving these test the meaning rather than grammar and will include commas. So this is one of those where it kind of tests two skills at once, and commas is part of that. Never put a comma between the last adjective and the noun it modifies. The loud, angry protesters mobbed the building. Loud protesters, angry protesters. Okay, the angry, loud protesters. Okay, that would work. So you're going to separate them. But right here, you never put a comma between those. The next rule is between a dependent clause and an independent clause, and the dependent clause comes first. So this is what he was talking about when he was saying DC, comma, IC. Okay. And it's so much easier in your brain to look at it this way than this way. This kind of, your brain gets overwhelmed because you have so many words and you're like, what's he talking about? It's just another word of saying fragment, comma, complete sentence. This way you don't become overwhelmed. Okay. What is a dependent clause? It's a fragment. Okay. That is what it is. It just basically cannot stand on its own. It's either missing a subject, it's missing a verb, or it's got those, but it doesn't make sense. You haven't completed your thought. And that ACT likes to do simply because kids will go, oh, there's a noun, there's a verb, and they don't read the whole thing to make sure that it completes sense. So please make sure that you double check and you read the full sentence and go, does this sentence make sense? Has it completed its thought? They begin with conjunctions such as before, after, because, when, until, unless, since. These are the most common ones tested on ACT. So if you want to pause me and write those down, that would be great. Here's some examples for you. Because I went home. And this is what I was saying just a minute ago. It's got a subject. And what did I do? I went home. But the problem that we have here is the word because. Because is a cause effect. Because I went home what? You're missing the complete thought. After we returned from the movie. Okay, same thing. We returned from the movie. That's a complete thought. The problem is that you said after. After what? What did you do next? When we visited Chicago. Same concept. Most common. So watch for those. And it will help you if you just look at these to remind you, and then that way you can just go, okay, there's my keywords. I know this is probably going to be a fragment. I'm going to need a comma. Okay, I know it says that it's in bold, but when I copied and pasted it, it didn't go into bold. So let's look at it. Because London is a very old city. Now this is where you've got to check. It what? It has buildings from many different eras. Complete sentence. So this is your IC. Because London is a very old city, that is a dependent clause, and so you have your comma. So when he says in his part DC, IC, this is what he's talking about. I see a lot of these on the ACT. On the last one that I looked at, there were 4 of these. So that's a big amount of questions. Now, for some of these, they did tie in some other skills, but you did have 4 of the way that this was constructed. Remember, if it comes at the end of a sentence, a comma may not be needed. This is what he was talking about when he did ICDC. Anne was too tired to eat. Complete sentence right there, right? Okay, here's our keyword after preparing an elaborate meal for herself. This is coming at the end of the sentence, and so even though, yes, it's a dependent clause, it's at the end, so no comma is needed. Scared of monsters, Tommy always checks under the bed before he fell asleep. Tommy always checked under the bed. Here's your independent clause. Keyword before, and then there's your dependent clause. And this is what you're going to see a lot on the ACT, is it actually has an introductory phrase too. And so you've got 3 different rules in one sentence, and so your brain, you've got to make sure that you don't overload it. The thing about the ACT is that for commas, less is better. Now, you can't just go into the ACT and go, oh, I always have to choose the one with, fewer commas. No. It just means that if you are completely stuck and you have no idea what you're doing, or you have no idea what the answer is, statistically, they're going to do less. Okay, commas set off non-essential phrases and clauses. Non-essential means it can be removed from a sentence without affecting its essential meaning. This is where I have kids that mess up. What is essential? Okay, raise your hand. Someone tell me what essential is. Okay. You have to have it. It's kind of like a little interruption. You're talking and then you go off on describe something, you interrupt yourself, and then you come back. Okay? How do you figure it out? When the information between the commas is crossed out, the sentence still makes sense, but the meaning could be slightly changed. Okay? Example, everyone voted Carrie, who is the most popular girl in our class, prom queen. So if you take out who's the most popular girl in our class, the sentence is essentially the same thing. Everyone voted Carrie prom queen. The decrepit street sign, which had stood in our town since 1799, finally fell down. The decrepit street sign finally fell down. So you're going to cross that out. Now, this one has a keyword that can help you, because you are always going to use comma before the word which. So when you see the word which, clue goes to your mind, hey, I need to put a comma here. They're always surrounded by commas. So one of the things you can do on the ACT, and this is what they say in the ACT prep books, and some of the experts say, and I'm going to tell you this, but I do want you, because they are experts, I do want you to take this with a grain of salt, because, when I was going through the ACT and I was, doing my explanations to help you guys with this, I noticed there were a couple of them that this explanation for might have led you to the wrong answer. So this tip that the experts give comes with a cautionary tale. All right. When you have a clause, if you don't know, does it need a comma, does it not need a comma, just look at the rest of the sentence. If there's already one comma there, you know there's going to be a second comma. If you look at your sentence and you go, well, this is beginning a clause, but there's not a comma there, you're not going to have a second one, because commas come in sets when you're talking about non-essential phrases. And I think the reason that kids may get confused and why I have that cautionary is you have to really know the comma rules and exactly what kind of rule it is. Like for me as an English teacher, it's good. But for you guys, it's, comma may go there, but you don't know specifically what rule it is. And that tip applies specifically to knowing that it is a non-essential phrase or clause. Okay, so I told you the tip, but I want you to use it with caution. All right, so they're always surrounded by commas. London, uh-oh, I see the word which. Red flag. Okay, you have to have a comma before the word which. And so if I'm looking at, 3 choices, 1 correct as is, so technically 4, and I see that there is no comma before the word which, I'm just going to cross that one out, and I'm going to move on. Because it's always better to narrow down your choices when you can. All right, London, which is a very old city. I've got 1 comma there. The tip says that if I have 1 comma, I've got to have another one at the end of the clause, and then there's my other one. London is a very old city. It does, however, now here's a interrupter. It's a transition. Okay, it's actually called a conjunctive adverb. I don't care if you know that specific word, but it's going to be like however, furthermore, those words that connect or interrupt. However, it's always going to have 2 punctuation marks. Right now, we're only going over this one. In different instructional video, you'll have the others. But for right now, this is what you'll need to kind of focus on. I see that there is no punctuation before however. It's wrong. Cross it out. It's not the right answer. So I'm just going to skim down here, and I'm going to find the one that has the 2 punctuation marks. Oh, this one does. So I'm just going to check and see which one is grammatically correct, because typically they'll have 2 with close answers, and you'll have to kind of go there. So London is a very old city. It does, however just interrupts the sentence. It's not needed, and so it can be crossed out, and the sentence still makes sense, and so you're going to have 2 commas. Here's a little note that ACT likes to do. Names and titles with commas around them should be treated like any other non-essential clause. Just cross out the name or title and see whether it makes sense in context without the name of the title. Okay, and I saw 2 of these on the last practice test that I gave. So you do want to kind of look at this. Okay, one of them you had to set it off by commas, and one of them you did not. So you can't go title automatically set it off. You have to look at it and ask yourself, is it needed? Okay, if it's necessary, then you're not going to use commas. But if you don't need it, if it can be removed, set it off by commas. And this is what I was talking about a little on the last slide. Your conjunctive adverbs like however, consequently, therefore, etc. There's a whole list. There's like 50 of them. These are the most common on the ACT. So I would write these on, well, your suitcase is probably getting kind of full. Write them on the back, write them on your own paper, somewhere, so that you know these are the ones that I'm more likely to see. They're set up by commas if they do not join 2 major sentences. And this is the part that you have to make sure that you are clear on. However, these conjunctive adverbs, however, consequently, therefore, they can do 2 things. They can combine 2 thoughts. This is just interrupting what you're saying, like the previous slide. So it's comma, comma. But it can also do 2 independent clauses. When it does that, you still have 2 punctuation marks, because you always have 2 punctuation marks with these words. Always have 2 punctuation marks with these words. Okay. But in this case, because it's independent clause and independent clause, it's going to be a semicolon and then a comma. I'll hit that again when we get to the semicolon rules. So don't necessarily think, okay, I got to write this down right now. You're going to see it again. All right, do not put commas with restrictive clauses. And these are just clauses that are necessary. Okay. How do you know? The word that is kind of a clue. Do not put a comma before the word that. ACT loves to do which and that in the same answer choices. Okay? Never put a comma before the word that. Always put a comma before the word which. Dictionary-wise, that and which are the same thing. So you have to, if you know that trick, it's going to save you time, knock down the choices, and kind of let you zero in on what they're wanting. Okay. The girl who is sick missed 3 days of school. The dog that ate rotten steak fell down and died. Okay. Necessary, necessary, no comma. Appositives. This has a separate name than the interrupter, but it does the same thing in the sentence. It's just different. It's got a different name because it renames this or describes. Whereas the other just interrupts your thought, but it's punctuated the exact same. Okay, you can take it out and it still makes sense. The tip is the same. Cross it out. The dog barked at all the neighbors. Completely makes sense, and so you have to set it off by 2 commas. Marty, the boy in the green shirt, made the only A in class. Marty made the only A in class. Well, and it's possible there's more than one Marty, but we're not getting into the details on this one. We don't need the boy in the green shirt. Okay. So we cross it out, it makes complete sense, and we're good to go. All right, these are the rules that, how they're going to trick you. This is what he was talking about at the bottom of the line. So on your, on your notes where you have the T-chart, and it's got, he said below the line. And then he said these are all the ways they're going to trick you. Okay. And you can go back and watch him again when he goes into detail on that. But these are the rules that they're going to try to trick you with. All right. Between 2 full sentences, independent clauses. This is the thing that he was telling you. This is what it's going to look like. Okay. You have 2 complete sentences and there's no punctuation mark between. Yes, that's wrong. You have to have punctuation. Sometimes they may just put a comma there. Okay? The problem is that you always have to have comma fanboy. This is called a comma splice. So incorrect. London is a very old city. Some parts of it are extremely modern. Your brain sees a comma and you think correct. No, it's comma fanboy. So you have to add, you got to find the correct answer that has that added transition word. You can use a period, obviously, because a period is a complete sentence, and you can use a semicolon, which we'll get into more with the semicolons lesson. Those are the 3 ways to correct this: is period, semicolon, or comma fanboy. The ACT will never give you all 3 of these in the same sentence. Okay? So when you're looking at it, you're not going to have to choose between a period, a semicolon, and comma fanboy. Only one of them will be on there. So you just need to remember that if your sentence is combined with just a comma, you're going to skip down to the answer choices and find one of these. Make sure, though, and this is the part that I found that kids struggle on, is they'll find a comma and then they'll automatically assume it's one of these. Not necessarily, because this is talking about 2 complete sentences. The dog went to the house and red car. Well, you see the word and you automatically think, oh, Miss Smith said comma fanboy, so I've got to add that comma here. No, I said it's comma fanboy when it is 2 complete sentences. and this is not two complete sentences. So you have to actually read the full sentence on the ACT for this, okay? Between an independent clause, which, remember, that is a complete sentence, and a dependent clause, when the independent clause comes first, okay? Remember, these are when not to use a comma. Okay. London, subject. London what? Has buildings from many eras. Complete sentence. Okay. Because it is a very old city. This is that key word we talked about earlier. Hey, when you see this, you know that it is a fragment. This one's coming at the end of the sentence, so you are not going to put a comma there. No comma before because. And they love to put that one on the ACT. I think, especially for the honors, the advanced honors, or the kids that like to read, this one's hard for them because in newspapers and books, writers use that. That's a different set of grammar rules besides standard academic grammar. We're not getting into that. Just know that there is grammatically no comma before the word because, since it is a dependent clause that comes at the end of the sentence. And then so there's no comma there. Between two clauses with the same subject where the subject is not repeated. London is a very old city, okay. Independent clause, comma, fanboy, but it has many modern buildings. The subject is not repeated there. Okay, so this one is correct. London is a very old city, but has many modern buildings. Now this does not have a subject. The subject is not repeated, so it is also correct. London is a very old city, but, no subject. This was probably on the practice test, the most missed question. You guys read this, and your brain is telling you it's talking about London. And so you see comma, you see fanboy, and you go, this is the correct answer. Your brain may be telling you that this is the city of London, but that is not what is on the paper, and so this is wrong. This is one of those questions where reading slower actually helps you. The faster readers, the speed readers, the ones who are very good readers, you're at a disadvantage on this because you're so used to filling in those blanks, and you can't fill in your blank here. It has to actually say on paper that second subject. Otherwise, this is a dependent clause. Okay, this is a fragment, and so you cannot put a comma there. Never separate your subject and your predicate, okay? Subject and your verb. It doesn't matter how long the sentence is. Kids see really, really long sentences and they go, oh, there's got to be a comma in there. Not necessarily. Okay. ACT likes to do this because less is better. European cities such as London and Paris are famous for their museums and monuments. Well, what is our subject? Cities. This is just describing the cities. Here's your predicate. No comma. You cannot split your subject in your predicate. Compound subjects and compound objects. I kind of touched on this on the other slide. Many tourists visit London and Paris to visit museums and monuments. What are they doing? They're visiting. What are they visiting? Museums and monuments. This is just two objects. Okay, it's not a list, it's just two objects. So your brain saw and you automatically said, hey, I've got to have a comma because it's a fanboy conjunction. It is a fanboy conjunction, but it is not combining two complete sentences. So it has to be independent to have that comma fanboy. Otherwise, it is just compound. Object or subject, in this case it's object. Many tourists visit London and Paris to visit museums and monuments. Again, incorrect. Correct. Many tourists visit London and Paris to visit museums and monuments. Okay, when I was copying and pasting, then I think I copied and pasted the wrong sentence into the correct part because this comma is not there. I'm sorry. If you have difficulty thinking in terms of subjects and objects, because you don't, English teachers do, but you guys are just looking at it as a sentence, then look at it this way. Comma, and then and. Okay, this is your comma fanboy. It's the same thing as a period. So stick that period in there in your head and see if it makes sense. If it does, you've got two complete sentences. Okay. And so the way to do that is visit museums, period, and monuments. And monuments is not a complete sentence, so no comma is needed. Before or after a preposition. Prepositional phrases can be so long, and kids like to see these long phrases and they're like, oh my gosh, there's got to be a comma. Not before or after a preposition, and there's always a couple of these on the ACT. So here's our subject, here's our verb. Among the most famous artists, this is a preposition, and it's a long phrase. Of Latin, there's a preposition. You never separate two prepositional phrases that are back to back. Okay? Never separate your prepositional phrases. It's not going to happen. It makes long sentences, and they could probably be worded better, but that's not what they're testing. They're not testing you on how to write a better sentence. They're testing you on the grammar rules, so don't get tripped up by that. This one, your brain is saying, oh, it's a long sentence, I need a comma, so they stick it after the preposition. No, you do not use a comma before the preposition or after. It is wrong. I don't know what I was doing. I'm going to stop copying and pasting. Let this be a lesson to you about copying and pasting from the internet. Okay. All right, looks like I copied and pasted this one correct. So, oh, my brain, this part's going to be underlined. Miss Smith said you never put a comma before the word that. So I'm going to skim through my answer choices, and I'm going to look for that one. You don't put it after the word that either. This is, you have to have this information. And so you're not going to set it off by commas. Setting it off by commas says, I don't need this. But by definition, the word that is telling the reader, you need this. Contradicts itself. No, you have to make sure you remember no comma with the word that. Not before, not after. This will save you on time on the English portion. As you're going through and you're going, oh my gosh, I'm running out of time. This is one of those where you can get it answered in less than 20 seconds. If you cannot reverse the order, no comma. Okay. So the Caribbean Sea contains some of the world's most strong coral reefs. Okay. You can't say the Caribbean Sea contains some of the world's most coral stunning reefs. That doesn't make sense. It has to be in this order, so there's no comma. Adjectives and nouns. You can't separate the adjective with the word it's describing. The Caribbean Sea contains some of the world's most stunning. Okay. Stunning what? It's a D, sorry. Adjectives, reefs, noun. Why would you separate that? This is necessary to it because this is describing it. So you don't set it off and tell the reader, hey, this isn't necessary. You have to have this, so no comma. All right, so we're going to stop here, and you're going to go to goformative.com. You're going to take that assessment called Comma Rules Suitcase number 1. When the class is done, you're going to come back, and I'm going to go over why. This way we can kind of see where you are. It does count as a grade, so you want to make sure that you think carefully about what the rule said. This is one of those that it's got an example of every single type on there, and it will really, really help you. So don't just run through it. All right, so you're